Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of AngularAir. I am your host, Justin, and on today's episode, we are going to get the latest and greatest on Scully. Looking forward to it. We've had some episodes on it before, so now we can see what's new in it. Always going to be awesome. Let's say hi to our panelists, and then we will meet our guest. Joining us today, we've got Alyssa. Alyssa, how's it going?
So excited to be here.
Nice. And Mike's with us. Mike, how's it going?
Going well. Thank you for introducing Alyssa first, because I was getting the YouTube chat up and running so that I could say hi to everybody, which I'm about to do.
Nice. And our guest joining us once again. We always love having you on. Sonder, how's it going?
It's going well, thank you. Today I finished working on Scully version 3. I'm going to release it probably Monday, and you might expect more regular releases from then on.
I was expecting you to say you were going to release it live on air today, but Monday's cool.
It's a Friday. We can't release on Friday. Come on.
I was supposed to, but Aaron just told me no. It's Friday.
Right.
And I said, but I want to do it on the stage, and I said no.
I know. And think how fun that would be. Share your screen. Let's push it up.
We'll start getting our chat filled with comments, right? Yeah. That'd be wild. How have you been?
Well, busy. I've been doing some aside of my Scully work. I've been doing some other consultancy things, as we all need to do, because we still need to earn money somehow. and Scully is really nice, but it doesn't really bring home the butter.
All right. So, it hasn't been sold to Microsoft yet for like $2 billion. No.
No. I'm working on that.
All right.
But Bill need to execute these options first before they have enough money for it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like Scully 4 might be a Microsoft.
Yeah. I'm going to a half-year release cycle, hopefully. Okay. So
nice. All right. I don't even remember what the last update we got on it. So maybe we should need to start with kind of just an overview of what Scully is. So if we have any viewers that might not know what we're talking about and what we're so excited about.
Okay. Well, I think it's over 2 years ago already that I last was here for a Scully talk. Back then, Scully was brand new, and we just released it, and it was working just as well as it does today. We have a couple of new nice things in there, but it basically takes your Angular application, runs it through our system, and on the other side pops out a boatload of index.htmls. And then you think, what's the use of that? Well, I'm going to tell you. That's how I am. The use of that is that it optimizes your application for SEO, which is hugely important. All your pages are indexable. And also this works not only for Google. Google understands JavaScript sites, but most of the other search engines don't as well as Google does. So you get indexing for all sites for free. You get faster startup. So if a person comes to your site for the first time, they will have the HTML rendered out instantly. And then after they are looking at this on the background, your app starts booting up and it transforms into your nice spa that you're used to. If you want to, because you don't need to do that. You can keep it as separate pages if you like. So it makes your application boot faster. It enhances your SEO. And the last thing, and not the least thing, is you can embed all your data into your HTML files, which basically means you don't need a server anymore. So no AP server to get product details because they are already embedded during the build time. And this can save a lot on deploy, a lot on costs that you have to make to keep our API server up and running in public. So that is what Scully actually does.
Assuming that data is static, correct?
Assuming that data is static or reasonably static. If it changes like one time a week, it's static enough to do this. If it changes multiple times a day, that's probably not a smart thing to render with Scully.
Oh, I love that. That's like the best rule of thumb I've ever been given, because I was almost thinking like even the way certain sites that maybe don't even change once a month, but like the way they're set up, they might not count as static. But so this is like helpful. It was very helpful.
Yeah, it is depending on the interval of changes. And if the interval of changes, if you can say, hey, we can render once a day and we are up to date on most things, good, Scully is for you. If you say, no, that's not possible because our thing is changing all the time, we need to have real data, real life data. Yeah, sorry, Jamstack is not for you. That is not even Scully. This workflow is not suited for that.
Then it depends on like your entry URL of how you're requesting that thing and stuff too, right? Because you start thinking about this product page, right? The entry URL may define the product ID, and then you can use that to say, hey, look, we know that product's not getting updated. So that's a great opportunity to say, let's make that static, right? And preload that. And then if we do know that it is going to change, I would assume we could have some way to like cache bust that or trigger a new release, right? I think another cool thing about that is like, it's not just the fact of like getting that information to the customer faster or the user faster. It's also the idea of, well, which is part of this, right? Is that then that static content can be deployed to like a CDN, right? So rather than actually hitting a server for the index HTML or whatever we're talking about, you can actually hit a CDN for that because, like you said, the data can all be there. Everything can be there in those static files. So that's another big plus. Yeah,
that is a really big plus. And I'm listening to a muted person now. I'm looking interested.
I said, listening to all of this, it sounds awesome, but it also sounds overwhelming. And I wanted to field Frosty's question of, is it hard to get started with Scully? What does that even mean?
No, not at all. No, you stand up, you dance around your desk a couple of times, you sit down, and you're done.
Do you need to dance? Do you need to dance well, or is it just any?
Any kind of dance. Preferably, some people should turn off their cameras before they do that.
I just did a terrible dance, and I was able to Scully, so we're good.
No. I can do a quick introduction later on. I didn't really prepare anything, but I think I can manage.
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just was thinking maybe it's as easy as running this ng-add schematic, or maybe it's really hard and you have to go find all your data points.
It is more or less. It is a little bit more than just running a schematic, but that's where it started. You do ng-add @scully.io/init, and it will add it to your current project, and then you basically say, okay, npx Scully, and Scully goes look at your project, pulls out all the routes that are in there, and will render those routes. However, if you are talking about a product page, which has probably a product ID in the URL, your Angular application doesn't know about this product ID. So we have a plugin that can fetch those product IDs for you. So then Scully knows, hey, I have like 10,100 product pages that I need to render. And
so to be clear, your routes in your application do not need to be static, but the URLs, and therefore the URLs don't need to be static. But with that, you can basically tell Scully what your routes are, and then it can statically generate that so that they're already rendered beforehand.
I can show a couple of things. I have like I'm going to open up the Scully repo, and I have a kitchen sink application in there that has everything Scully has to offer. So that one will be overwhelming. There will be a boatload of things going on in those config files, but I'm going to zoom in on a couple of things there to show you how it is working. But in a new application, it is just ng-add, and then add a couple of things to a config file. I will show a bigger config file in a little while, and there you can see.
And
that is. Oh, go ahead.
At that point, you're opting in, right? You're adding it to your code base, but then you're opting into when you want to start using it, right?
Yeah.
You can add that routes and things like that. Yeah.
That is exactly
I
how
want
it
you to show
works.
us the bits, Sander. We want to see the bits.
You don't know what I cooked up in the last time? You just want to go to the
No, I want
boring
all the
code
things.
stuff?
Sorry, no. You do the new things too. I'm just so excited. I can't wait.
Well, you probably might recall that we used Puppeteer in the past to render the pages. That is a really nice thing to render because it basically takes whatever you throw at it and it gives me back a basic index HTML that then gets processed further along by Scully. We have added a couple of things there. We also now support Playwright, which is the same thing but then from Microsoft. The nice thing about that is it works on Apple M1 chips, where Puppeteer doesn't.
Oh.
So we support that. And we have a Scully platform server renderer, which we just call Scully platform server, because Scully platform server renderer is way too long. And
real quick, you threw out a whole lot of different technical things.
I can do that.
To be clear, a lot of that logic of Puppeteer and Playwright and this new Scully platform server, they're all encapsulated inside of Scully, correct? That
Yeah.
if I'm just doing a relatively basic Scully application, to Frosty's point of getting started, I don't have to worry about that, right? That's all hidden away from me, but I have access to change that if I want to, right?
Exactly. And
cool.
if needed, you can even change it on the fly. And I'm going to show that.
What? So
dig it.
I have a friend who's like using Angular in like a Microsoft desktop app. Is that why you would use something like Playwright, or why?
Scully uses it has a process. Phase one, we have an Angular application we need to do something with. So we're going to compile the Angular application. So we have a dist folder. So Scully works with the dist files basically. It reads your source code because it wants to find the routes. Once we have found the routes, we don't need to do that again until you change them. But some people scan the routes all the time because they forgot to do it once and then we're looking for it for like 2 hours. Why does my new route doesn't work? Because it wasn't found. Because you didn't tell Scully to look for routes, and it used the things it had before. But if you have a big application with a load of routes, or you have some special things going on there, finding those routes can take like a couple of minutes even. So it's not a slow process, but in some cases it can be a slow process. That's the reason why by default we cache those things. So once we have scanned the application for routes, we keep using. Most often you are not going to add or remove routes from my application. That is actually a very rare thing to do, unless you are extending it and then you add it and you scan once and it is there. I completely lost track of my.
So the part, like the static site generation part, like one of it is that you've got to get that site, that moment running in a browser because you want the output of that, right? Like you want it, what the browser already done to it. Angular's already run, everything's completed, the DOM is settled, right? And then you want to then essentially take like a snapshot of that DOM, right?
Yeah. I was going over the Scully process. So once we scan the routes, we're going to enrich them. We have terms for this in Scully. We have an unhandled route, which is basically just the text of the route, which will be like /user/colon ID or something like that, /post/colon another ID. And then we have router plugins that can take those routes, analyze them, and then go out to most of the times just to an API that gives a JSON back where we can pull out those IDs. And then we have like handled routes where you have the route including the filled-in IDs. And this sounds, I want to share my screen. Let's see. I'm going to share this one. It's nearly empty.
You ready for me to bring it on the screen?
Hold on a little bit. I'm
Okay. Just let me
going
know.
to move my editor over there. Is this readable? Or do I need to enlarge the things a little bit?
Enhance a little bit. Yeah. There you go. A few more, I think.
Enhance.
Enhance. It's the official movie
I
term.
really feel fancy now. It's like, okay.
All right. So what are we looking at here? We have 2 terminals and a
Yeah.
editor.
I have an editor and I'm going to open the Scully sample blog config, which is our extended version. I'm going to bring you back so I can see you. Yes, this is very readable. Our config file can become a little bit large, and we are using this thing. I'm using this one in multiple configs. I can show it later on. So in here you see it is basically just a JavaScript file, and you can even import another file. Now let me show you the other one. I cannot type under pressure, which is a handicap.
No pressure.
No pressure felt whatsoever.
Good.
I'm the exact same way, or even like use my mobile device in front of people. It's a really weird handicap. Like they'll be like, "Can you show me that picture?" And I'll be like I've never seen my phone before, you know? Like
Yeah, and suddenly all your icons are on different places. Yeah. The
I'm
same
like,
thing.
What's a photo? You know, yeah, it's bad.
I think it has to do with hyperactivity because.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I had this episode today that, okay, where did I put my car keys? I have like a new car which is sitting out on the driveway. Where did I put my car keys? Well, it turns out I did leave them in the car, which was unlocked with the keys in there, out there for half a day.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Which is a brand new electric car. That is like the sensible thing to do, right? With keys. You leave them in the vehicle so people can use it if they need to. So, and I only found out because my wife asked, "Hey, did you mean to leave the car unlocked?" I said, "Unlocked? Why? I don't know. Let me take my... Oh, where are my keys?
Where are my keys?
Good. Back to the program. This is, don't fear, this is a complex config. The most configs are way easier than this. Mostly what you need in a config is a return of a config object that is like the project name, something that looks like this. Is this? Yes, this is readable. I was talking about a route. This is what we called an unhandled route. And in here, I say, hey, this is a type JSON. So I know this is going to fetch some JSON from somewhere. And the user ID, I'm going to describe where the user ID comes from. It is coming from this API.
Did you type all of this by hand?
Yeah, you type all of this by hand or you copy paste.
Okay.
There is documentation there. If you... this is all documented on the Scully docs. I will not go into detail too much, but we have a result handler where we can massage the data that's coming out of the API. Sometimes it's like 3 levels deep or something else. And in here, you can just get the raw data from the endpoint. And you, in this case, I just need to filter it. I only want to do 5 and not like 500. And I'm going to read out the property ID. Another one is we have like a contact text handler. Basically, if you have a route like this, content hello, it says hello. It's a default handler and it has a contact text of type HTML. and this is just the HTML. Well, usually you don't put the HTML plain like that in a config file, but you can replace that with a promise that gets it from wherever you need to fetch this HTML from. And if it's a markdown file, you say it's content type markdown. Scully knows how to handle markdown, so it will translate it to HTML and insert it into the thing. And the content is... Do you want to see the content thing in the application? I think I can open that.
Sneaky peek.
Are you talking about the actual piece that is doing the replacement of that content, or are you talking about the output?
I'm talking about the content component, which displays the output in the Angular application.
Gotcha.
And this is really a hard thing to do. You put in Scully content.
The sass. I love it. I was ready. I was like, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. You put in Scully content, and because this is Scully content, the config where I just was knows, okay, inside of, not inside, it works just like the router. So just before Scully content comes whatever is pulled in here. And this is generated. You see, this is generated from a function. This can be an async function or a function returning a promise, which is the same as an async function. And you see, you can go over and over. We have a route with two things in here.
Mm.
So we have the users and we have the post ID. And I'm feeding the user ID to the second URL. Because quite often, if you are having users and posts, you probably want to have those posts probably have to do something with the user that is above it. Mm-hmm. So in this case, you have like to combine those things. Scully does all the hard work for you and say, just feed in what I need, put it in there, and I will do the hard work, do the API requests, and make it into a route.
So is this for the part of using Scully where, like, let's say we're making a blog engine or something like that, where we're kind of creating the core application just to be like a scaffolding of loading content, and then we're working the content in a different spot, and this is bridging that connection?
This is bridging some of those gaps. The content text is there for if you have like a single page with like dynamic content in there, and that content is coming from a CMS or from a text file on your computer, or I don't really care where it's coming from, but this is like, okay, this page has going to be this content, and this is the one-to-one relationship. We also have like the blog, which is like more like this. We have a blog, and the blog we have a slug, and there we have a content folder, and it will go over all the files that are in this folder and put in all the things there.
That's in there. So it's like Scully allows us to do a lot of things, and this is like one of the things, right? So like if I was to look at it and say, I have a site that renders products that people can buy, and so I already have the Angular app, I already have it all working. I'd like to optimize it for SEO and get faster time to interactive for customers. So I want to bring Scully in to solve that problem. That is a little bit different than what we see on the screen right now in terms of what you're doing, right? That's more of what I'm talking about here for the product is
you do this. You have like a product and then product ID, and you go to the backend, you get a list of product IDs, and Scully makes a URL, a handled route for every product that is going to be there. And the product is a nice one because if you are displaying products, probably you are going to have some business stuff added, like a shopping chart. The nice thing about Scully is you can have like kind of a hybrid variant where you render like most of the page, but skip a couple of parts that only activate when your application is actually starting. So you render the entire product page except from this part that has the shopping chart thing with the dot, with the color dot where the number of products that's in there renders. you can say, hey, if Scully is running, I'm going to put a placeholder there. And once the application is started, I'm going to replace this placeholder by the real shopping chart. It's not a shopping board, it is a shopping cart.
And so then we're setting up the URL, and like in like the product scenario, our URLs are dynamic because they can be handed whatever product ID, right? So we need to tell Scully, here's the path, here's the route. By the way, it's dynamic. So here's when you encounter this product ID, I want you to run this code that I'm going to write that says, make sure I only want to do it for 5 products. So yeah. I'll put this code in here that says, hey, when this route is matched and the product ID is there, make it only return one of these 5, and or match on one of these 5, and then the rest would just be handled normally as it is. But then Scully would be intercepting these 5.
Exactly.
Does that sound
well, it's going to intercept all of them, but
yeah, right.
It's going to render out those 5 that you have provided the data for.
It's only going to do the Scully dance on the 5 that come back from that.
Yeah, you have to do the Scully dance. But let me first run Scully. I'm going to use a little bit more complex command because I'm in the Scully repo itself, and I cannot use npx to run Scully. But usually you do npx Scully and then the options. I have to run it from the dist folder right here. In here, I'm going basically starting Scully by running node directly. I'm stating which project I'm running. I want to run the sample block. This thing is named sample block, so there's some sense there. I'm going to remove the static things. That means, okay, throw away whatever I did before. That is optional. By default, it keeps what is there. But for demonstration purposes, it is easier to throw it away. And this is something that only works in my demos, because I build it to my demos because I need to be able to switch over. I'm going to render it, in this case, with Playwright. But let's just start this thing up. And just because I'm going to run it with SPS2. SPS is the Scully platform server.
Is this going to build our regular Angular application and then all the Scully stuff? Or is this just doing the static content?
There is a little bit difference there. For the Playwright version, it is using the already built application. And now it is going over all the pages. And you see it took like 31 seconds. And it rendered. It uses almost 500 milliseconds for a page, which is not bad. I can do Puppeteer, which is something in between. If you look at the other one, it's a little bit faster. It is processing the same amount of pages in 9 seconds, and I'm taking 61 milliseconds. And
I missed, what's the difference between the two sides? What did you do?
The right side, I'm using Playwright.
Gotcha.
The one new renderer. Playwright is not fully optimized. It's not beta, but it is not really crystallized once. It's going to be a little bit faster as it is now. And on the left side, it's the Scully platform server, and that is not doing a couple of more things. First, Scully starts compiling the Scully folder. There is a Scully folder, and you can do your custom plugins. And if you look here, I have my Scully folder. Too much things open. I have my sample block file here. I have a tsconfig. I have some things in here. It is going to compile everything in there so that the config can use whatever is in there. Because we are using TypeScript, we need to compile it first. So the first step Scully does is it's going to compile everything that is there. Then it's listing, hey, you selected SPS. So over here, it probably is listing, hey, you selected Playwright. Surprise there. And it gives me some... I also update the layout out of this. It's easier to read now. The Angular build will be imported I talked about the dist files. It is going to import that into Scully stream, so it knows basically the HTML file with the vendor XIZ blah blah, this hash that no one ever cares about, but you need to have it for caching busting. It copies the index.html to a 404 page. If you're going to do static sites, you need to set your server up for static rendering. So you need to have like a 404 page. And that 404 page can be your normal application, and the application needs to know how to handle a 404. But that's not that hard, but it creates one for you. I heard a almost question there.
I was letting you finish.
Okay. It looks, if the Scully server is already rendering, it's using a server on the background because it's using a browser to render the pages. We need to have a server that serves our application. That is basically the Scully server. It's a dev tool. It's not something you need for distribution. For distribution, you're just going to put your stuff on a normal static site server. And here's something new. Angular application compiled successfully. Scully will compile your application into the Scully into our runtime folder in the Scully system, so it can load your application. I'm adding a couple of things there, so your application knows about things like the platform server and a couple of other things that you need to know if you want to run with the Angular platform server. The Angular platform server is the thing that drives Angular Universal also. We are not using Universal. We are using the low-level thing for that because it gave me the power that I needed.
So how does...
Oh, go ahead.
Really quick. How does that align with if we're using different versions of Angular? Like, does that come into play here? Like in terms of what version Scully's using and things like that?
No,
like is Scully building anything?
Yeah, we are. I was saying I'm going to release version 3, which is a breaking change. It means we are supporting Angular 12 and up with version 3. So it needs to be Angular 12 or up. We can work with any version. Scully has a peer dependency from Angular 12 and up. So it works with 12, it works with 13. But I had to, because of version 13, Angular is now only shipping ESM files. So I had to convert Scully completely to ESM, which was a boatload of work. But it's done. This is also a nice one. I started 32 workers. So there are, on the background, there are 32 tasks just handling the rendering engine. Depending on your CPU and the thing, I have found that 3 times the number of CPUs work optimal for most applications, but it is depending. And also in CI/CD, it might be entirely different depending on setup, memory, number of CPUs. If I look at GitHub Actions, I get like the most effective use if I use 4 workers. Well, on my computer, I get the most effective use if I use 128. It says, hey, there are 5 routes added by extra routes. Sometimes you have a route that you don't know on beforehand or is coming from somewhere else. You can tell Scully, hey, also go to this route. The route needs to do something in your application, otherwise it will render out an empty page. But it is something you cannot automatically discover. Sometimes we have like hidden routes or things that are a little bit different in the setup that cannot be automatically discovered. You can add those to the extra routes. You might also add all of your products there saying, okay, this URL, those all go in the extra routes. If that's something that's easier for you, go full speed ahead, do it like that. Let's see what's more. We are using the stored. I went over this before. I'm loading the routes that from the Angular application that I had stored before. let's see. And here, basically, I start out rendering all of the pages. This is an expected error because now my Angular application is running in the console. This is usually in the browser, on the console log of the browser, but there is no browser anymore. So this is the console log of the browser. This was an expected error. This is you don't see this error in here in the other one because that is logged out in the browser and we don't have access to that. But in this version, I have access to all those things and I can show it. It doesn't break anything, but that is the reason the error is there. Let me start a little bit more. I'm going to start the same application. I'm just going to add a couple more routes. And also I'm starting a couple of more. I need to start the right.
While that's running.
Yeah.
So if I had to think of Scully, the tool, as an intern, and say I have this intern and we're going to name him Mulder because, Scully and Mulder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Alyssa likes that too. So what I would need to do to train Mulder to statically generate my site before it gets deployed is that the first thing I need to tell them is what routes do you need to go to? And we do that in our Scully configuration. You say, hey, these are those routes. Now in Scully,
Yes.
We can do that in code and we can go and find all the users. I would have to have Mulder go and look up in the database, run a query and say, oh, I have user 4, 8, 12, whatever. So that's that step of actually the route discovery. Then what I have to have him do is I have to have him go render each one of those routes. So type that URL into your browser, go get that HTML and save it locally and put it into a directory. And I correlate the idea of using Playwright, Puppeteer, and the Scully platform server as using different browsers. If I'm doing IE, which I shouldn't, I'm doing Edge, Chrome, and Firefox, right?
Yes.
I have 3 different ways of saying, hey, process this code, load it up in the browser to be able to save the HTML. So those are 3 different ways of doing that, like 3 different browsers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And those are...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Those are different rendering engines, and actually the Scully platform server doesn't use our actual browser. Well, Playwright and Puppeteer do.
Yeah. But I consider it to be synonymous, right? The idea of saying, all right, I need to execute the page to say, hey, go do all my Angular things of the application that I wrote. Or Alyssa wrote. Thanks, Alyssa. So you're basically processing all the code so that you have the output HTML of what the user sees rendered in their page. And then they save that into a directory locally, and then they publish that. And Scully does that save into your dist, where is it going there? Dist static, and then the name of the application, and then the routes separated out there, which is awesome. So
this is something that you would automate, or that you just do every
Scully does all that automation for you. If I had somebody doing it,
yeah, they would have like a full day's work.
Yes.
And then Scully is not even done when it's done that, because it takes the output HTML and processes that with additional plugins. We have post-process plugins, and basically we can say, hey, this is the output of the Angular application, but we want to optimize the CSS. So we have we can inline the CSS. Also, we want to minify the HTML, and we want to put in a page title. We want to put in a page description. Also for SEO, you need a page description, you need a meta tag, you need all of those things you can do with Scully, because once Angular is done, you get the HTML and you can write your own plugins to amend this thing. We deliver quite a couple of plugins that take care of most of the important things, but still there is always a use case that warrants writing your own plugin. And writing your own plugin sounds complex, but it isn't.
It says like the literal coding genius of my life. Like Sonder can do anything in any language, and he's like, "Hey, Dash, if he says something's not complex, you run. All right, you run."
No. This is really not complex. I have been assured by other people that this is not complex.
Okay, there you go.
But remember, Saunders just like us. He leaves his keys in his car, so there's also that. We're
there's a few other features that you haven't really talked about that I know of within Scully. So is there a way, and I know the answer to this question, but I'm letting you talk about it. Is there a way within your Angular application, you talked about the idea of a shopping cart, when that gets rendered, to know whether or not, to basically tell your application that it is running in this mode here through one of these server-based routes at build time through Scully, or if it's running in the client's application, to be able to do that?
Of course, we have taken this in. We have a couple of utility functions, and they work in Angular, but they also work in other script language. So if you need to add some manual scripting for some reason whatsoever, you can use them there too. There is an is Scully running, which basically means, hey, this page is being rendered right now, and you might want to skip this, or you might want to add this particular part. And we have a function that is called is Scully generated, which tells, okay, I started from a static page that was rendered by Scully.
So if I wanted, I could have a Scully service within my application that exposes an observable that says a true or false value is Scully running, so that I could conditionally show different parts of the application or different things, like static shopping cart with maybe a spinner icon or something like that, versus a shopping cart with a number.
Yes, the shopping cart is a good example. You do is Scully running, and then you place a small template with a spinner, with a shopping cart spinner thingy, and you leave that on there. And once your application boots, that thing gets kicked out by Angular, because Angular starts and says, hey, what is this? Go away. And yeah, go away.
So ogres are like onions, and akin to that, Scully has its different layers too, right? It's basically, hey, go get started and go find all my routes and do all my stuff for me, and I'm good. But maybe you have a more complicated thing where you have route parameters. Scully allows you to peel that back and say, hey, here's those routes. Or you have those ideas that you talked about with hidden routes, and you want to expose that, and you can do that. But if you want to dive into your application and say, all right, well, I want to only do certain things when Scully's run, you can peel back that layer and expose that and get into that. I like that approach, that you can pick and choose what you need and want to be able to.
Basically, we made it this way that everything is opt-in. You don't need to do anything, and you get like a reasonable, good result. But we can do better, and we keep on repeating, and we can do better, which is how we ended up with a Scully platform server renderer thing.
I have a question later on for that one too.
But like eventually you get to that core of that onion, right? And there's no more layers to peel out. So then you got to go to 3.0 and get a bigger onion, right?
Yeah. We keep on growing onions, so we hand you a bigger onion.
So now the 3.0 onion.
Just get a bigger onion. Like,
yeah.
So what's in the 3.0 onion?
Get a new one. I just wanted to show like a really small plugin. So here is one. It's a route test thing. I have no clue what it does. Actually, I do, but I'm going to pretend that I have no clue what it does. It is a post process by DOM, because sometimes you want to manipulate the DOM. That is something we do in our business. And you don't want to parse like a big blob of text and filter and so on. Sometimes you want to do that. For that, we have post-process by HTML. But in this case, you are getting handed a DOM. The DOM is a JS DOM. We have something that put this out for you. I'm going to get window and document out of the DOM. And then I'm going to get some content from a URL that is coming from somewhere. Actually, it is not coming from somewhere. It's from the config. And it is raw test. I will look this up in a little while. And it's going to say, hey, I'm expecting a text HTML. So the content is going to be a string. And I'm just going to do document write content. So basically, I'm saying, hey, whatever you have, throw it away. Here is a new content for this page. This is something you normally don't do. But there might be some cases where you want to do this. If you have like a really specialized 404 page that is maintained elsewhere, this is how you blow away your current 404 page and replace it with a new one. I document write and I return the DOM. This is raw test. Well, it's there 4 times. And I have a raw route. That's a nice word, a raw route. Okay. Of type raw test. And it is going to use this URL, which is also quite raw.
Nice.
So you see, you can, this is a plugin that simply takes a page, throws it away, and puts something else in place entirely. And
this is done at the build level when we're building that static asset.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how does it, when we go to deploy this to our production, right? Like, how does that unfold? We're taking these index files that got built by Scully.
Well, I did run the thing, so I have a couple of those somewhere in my probably dist folder. There is a static thing. I have my there's a boatload of things there, but my sample block application, we have the raw route and the index.html is this. This is not coming from my Angular application. This is coming from an entire different endpoint. So this is the raw route we just looked at the plugin for. If we're going to look at the users, we have like, okay, we have users. Oh, I did the heavy one as last. So I have probably like 500 users. It's not that good. You noticed that it was running, right? Like the 5,000 routes. So yeah, we really have like a bundle of them. And here we have an index.html. And in this index.html is, probably I've broken something because, oh yeah. It is, the user is in here, the next user, the previous user. Oh, okay, I broke something. I'm going to fix this. But there is some content here now that says loading. So probably I'm rendering a little bit too soon. Is that the case everywhere? Probably. You should not run your samples from your repo where you're working in. Yeah, it's the same here.
So then once these files are generated, then how do we get these to production? And then how do we drive traffic to them?
Well, you basically, this is the sample block. These are all your files. You deploy this to a static file hoster, like GitHub Pages, AWS, an AWS bucket, anything where you can host a static file. And you say, hey, I have a static site. Here it is. You upload all of those files and you're done. It is static hosting. It is not that complex. We are making it more complex nowadays. But for static hosting, it's basically copy paste all of those files into the folder of the server that is hosting your thing.
So then to get to that, to get to those pages, to get to those files, somebody's going to go in their browser and it's going to type in a URL and it's going to resolve to these files, right?
Yeah.
And so if we're going to user 10 and user 15, there's 2 different files as if we went to 2 different URL destinations on a server versus, say, going to a single page application and loading the one index file and then having it internally route to user A and user B, or user 1, user 10, right? Does that sound right so far?
That sounds right. I found users that I know what was wrong. Those higher numbers of users don't actually return data. So one of the lower numbers actually has data in there. So here you can see I have my ng content, and there is the user data is in there.
So this path to this file, if you go to this index.html file,
yeah,
right?
you go. This is the index HTML. So the user goes to my great application /user/15, and then the server knows. Okay, I'm going to look in /user/15. Oh, there is an index.html. There you go, user, and they hand it over.
So it comes back to the browser. The browser renders this index.html file. Boom, they get it instantly. It's fast, and then Angular kicks in, right?
Yep.
And Angular kicks in and runs our Angular application at that point, and now we're live with the SPA. But our entry URL is user/15 to get to our index page that's running our Angular application. So how does our Angular application now route to user 27 and take over that routing at that point? Because the base href,
that is how Angular works. If you are programming and you are in your application on user 25 and you press F5, the same thing happens.
So there's a base href, right? That the Angular application knows that everything in this URL is up to that point or whatever, and then from there it takes over the routing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm just trying to think about how that gap gets bridged once Angular fires up.
I will tell you how the gap is bridged. The page is there, everything is there. Angular starts booting. The first thing Angular does is, what is all this crap? And it throws it away. So you get like a nice blank page. And then it says, oh, I'm on user 25, so I'm going to get the user and I'm going to build the page, and it fills up everything again, which sounds like a not really good experience. And that's where I wanted to show this. Scully helps you there too, because we have something called Scully transfer state, which is on line 229. And this is the data of your user, the data that goes into this page. And the nice thing is, we have set Scully up so that this is available. This is a script tag before the Angular application starts. So it is available in sync. That means Angular starts up and sees, oh, I have this data. I know what to do. And this whole throw back and grow back thing happens in one frame. So the user doesn't notice this. It is happening. Everything is thrown away and rendered back, which is something we cannot prevent just yet. But we cannot prevent it for now. But by using the transfer state from Scully, we have like the Scully transfer state, which is yet another part of the onion you can unpeel. But now you have the thing, and hey, but if I'm going to move from user 15 to user 14, how do I get the data from user 14? Well, basically, how am I going from user 14 to user 15? Well, you tell Scully will fetch the data.json from user 15 for you. And in this is just a JSON file that has the data that is needed for that page. And we generate this data file for every page that has a Scully transfer state. So this data is encapsulated inside of the HTML file, but we also split it out into a separate file, basically for convenience and a little bit of speed, because I can just load an HTML file and parse out the Scully content out of the HTML file. But that means that I might need to load 20 kilobytes of HTML. Well, the actual data is only like 1 kilobyte of data. And by splitting it out, Scully looks and say, hey, oh, there is a data.json. I will get that. And here you go. You don't need to go to your endpoint to get the user. I have it for you. Nice and fast from the CDN.
So it's not just that initial entry where they're getting the static content. It's also the ability to say, if we've already statically cached or built other routes in our app, we could leverage those when our app is running at runtime. That's really cool. Yeah. So in the case of a product, if I say I have 10 products that I want to statically render, then a customer comes in and sees the first one. If they go to any of the other 9, we're still leveraging the static built stuff.
It will go to number 15 and fetch the data from number 15, and it will go to number 27 and fetch the JSON from number 27 or whatever number. If I don't know what I broke, I'm going to check. But usually there is like a data.json. Oh, here. There are multiple. So there is a data.json for everything that has a transfer state. Not all pages can have they all can have a transfer state. And you need to be a little bit careful, because if you have like a user service that loads like 500 of users and you're putting this in your transfer state, it is going to be in the transfer state of every page, which might not be what you want. It might be what you want, but probably it's not what you want, because then you keep loading the same data over and over and over again, which is not a wise thing to do. It is cached, so it's not a really, really big deal, but it is something you might want to prevent. You just want to keep the data for that one user or that one product for that page as local as possible. It is a little bit buy-in, but if you do it well, your users are getting a really seamless experience. It is going to be fast. It is going to be snappy. It's going to be cheap in hosting. I scared Elias away.
She had to run. She had another commitment.
Oh crap! Are we? Yeah.
Yeah, we're at the top.
Yeah, we are at the top. So,
yeah, but I'm not done with you yet.
Mike has a question.
Because my mind's over here spinning.
Good.
So I'm all done with Scully 3. Super great. Good job. Yay. You mentioned the Scully platform server. That's new. Playwright is new with 3, correct? Those 2 things are new?
Yeah.
I like that. You talked about the Scully platform server and how it's using the Angular platform server that's provided. And the other thing that uses that is Universal.
Yeah.
So my mind saying Scully runs at build time, Universal runs at runtime. When's Scully gonna take a walk over to potentially be there for server-side rendering?
Well, we have like a roadmap, and if you take a look at there is something for that. The first thing we are going to provide is like a static build server, which is something in between. It basically is a just-in-time server. If the first user comes along and goes to product 20,005, it's not on the CDN, so we go to the server. The server says, hey, we are going to render this page, because we have a little bit faster server now. If you have enough pages, it's going to be 4 milliseconds for a page in this demo. For a real page, it will be like 10 or something like that. It's not different really from Universal. And it's going to put that on the CDN. So the first user has to wait like 10 milliseconds more than all the other users. And it needs to be deployed to the CDN, so perhaps 15. But then it's available. That is the next step, and we will slowly go to.
So is that like an on-demand static generation? So first time a route gets hit, it says, "Oh, I need you. I'll go render you. I'll hold on to it. I've got it."
Yeah.
And then anytime another route gets hit, so I do my Scully build, I deploy it. That's great. And then a new user gets added, right? Justin signed up for my service. Thanks, Justin. And I want his user stuff to be there as well.
Yeah,
so as soon as someone,
as soon as someone goes to that route, it's going to hit the server and saying, "Hey, I don't know this route," and it's going to run Scully. And if it's an existing route, if you indeed edit Justin, it will render the route with the information about Justin there. So yes.
So to be clear, though, if somebody routes, so they go to the application, they're logged in, they're looking at something else, and inside the app that's already run in the browser, I navigate to Justin.
Yeah.
That's not going to cause that to load because it's just
No.
the routing's being done in the browser. It's not making the full server request for
No.
that index.html. It's perfectly
No, when you're on that user and you copy the HTML and send that to someone that have never ever been there, it is going to be there.
To anyone that's ever been there, or they hit refresh,
or they hit refresh. Yes,
I like it.
So that's the next part, and that is still Jamstack. If you go full SSR, which is something we might enter into, but basically then there is so much overlap with Universal. I'm not sure that is the extra work for that, because if you go full SSR, you have things like sessions and stuff like that to take in account, which we made sure it's not in here because that is not the thing we want to solve. We want to solve the first time page load. Mostly we want to solve SEO, and logged in users with specialized user pages is not something that a CEO needed or even wanted.
Cool.
And there are going to be like more things. Then one of the next things is like I have not a proper name for this, but it is kind of a monitor service that is basically available on the web. And whenever you add something to your CMS is going to this server, and the server says, hey, this resource is updated. Where did I use that? And it goes through the whole thing that Scully has generated and says, oh, I used it here, here, and here. I'm going to re-render and redeploy these pages.
All right. So in that example,
we need a little bit of funding for that.
Yeah. In that example, though, so the idea is I have this application that's showing, it's like Amazon.com, right? I've got all these products that I'm showing. And I go in to my CMS and I say, oh, there's a typo in the product description. And I type something wrong. And I go in and I change that. Then it would potentially, in theory, go out and say, oh, that data source has changed. This route is using that data. Go ahead and re-render that specific route and deploy it to the CDN so it's already updated for everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. That'll be very cool.
That is where we are going for, but this is going to take some more time, and we need some funding, or we need like someone with a big shopping cart application that wants this behavior. Contact me. We can talk.
Nice.
I love it.
Yeah. I think it would be fun to have another episode at some point where we build out the whole product shopping cart example, right? Something real simple, but just see it in action where we can see.
Yeah, this was all a little bit ad hoc, and I wanted to show a couple of new things. I really wanted to show is the platform server render, because it is really, really fast, 4 milliseconds for a page. It's even faster than Angular Universal can pre-render anything or even render a page.
Yeah. Great work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You and Jeffrey, I saw him in chat as well.
Yeah, Jeffrey did write the Playwright Renderer on his own. Basically, the Playwright Renderer is like a third-party renderer that is by community contributions. So really thank you, Jeffrey, for all your hard work on the Playwright. It is a really rewardful addition, because not only it's a different renderer, it also enables things like, okay, we can now render in Firefox and in Edge instead of just Chromium, which for some applications might be really important.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we're a little past the top of the hour, so I guess we'll call it a wrap. Sander, thanks again for coming and sharing your time. And as always, we love having you here and really appreciate all the knowledge you're sharing with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you asked me. And if you are ready for like a demonstration on how to start with Scully, and I can build a Scully site from zilch and do like a small shopping cart, which is a terribly hard word to say.
Basket. We can say basket. How about basket?
A shopping basket. That's way better. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, let's talk and let's plan something. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Awesome.
I would be more than glad to do that.
Awesome. Sounds fun.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Catch you next time. See ya.
Oh, we don't have pics today?
Oh, okay. We can do picks. Yeah. You got picks?
Yeah, Angular
Okay.
13.1 is released,
Okay.
and it has TypeScript 4.5. And you know the really nice thing there? Top level await.
Okay.
And
With
I'm
TypeScript?
excited. Yeah, I'm excited on top level await with TypeScript. That is something that is a bane in my existence for a long time. That is
All right.
missing. And now it's there. I'm happy.
Nice. That is a good pick. I'm glad we waited. Mike, do you have any picks? I don't have any picks.
I do. I just finished watching. I binged because it just came out on, I think, Friday. The last part of the last part. The show doesn't have seasons; they're called parts, and they broke the last part into 2 sections. So the last of the show came out of Money Heist on Netflix, Casa de Papel. But it is a really good show, and I enjoyed the ending. No spoilers, but it was good. I liked it.
I'm doing the Wheel of Time now, which is also a really, really great thing if you want to pass some time.
Nice. Good picks. All right.
Okay.
With that, we're good.
We are good.
All right. Thanks for pulling in the picks. I forgot about that. All right. Have a good one.
Have a good one. See you.